spending a few minutes with Lights. The new album PEP is dropping. You're just about to hit the road on a new tour. I think the lyric says it all. Baby, I'm back. Is it finally feeling real at this point?
Well, yeah, like that's exactly it. I feel like I'm gearing back into a busy schedule again. But it is funny. Like, I have been making music over the course of the last few years, and quite a lot of it, actually. Done a lot of collab releases, and I did another EP, and I have a side project that I launched. But it's funny because it doesn't feel like anything when you're doing it all from your couch. You know, it's like very anticlimactic. There's no physical manifestation of the rewards. You're just like smiling on your phone on the couch. So yeah, like now that I'm going back and forth to rehearsals and working on some cool installations for the release and constantly working on designs and shipping out packages, it feels real again, and I'm very tired, but it's tired in a good way, and I think I've learned to really appreciate it more than ever. The last few years have made me like really value this feeling of exhaustion and putting my effort into something that I get to reap the rewards for.
Now, the album has a very upbeat, confident sound, but it really came from a challenging place for you. How did you fight through that and sit down and start writing an album?
Yeah, the last couple of years were really challenging. I remember the day that everything hit. I was supposed to fly out to the Juno Awards the following day, and everything happened, and I knew that moment that I was fucked. And I remember sitting down, my grandpa was visiting, and I just sit down on the couch and start crying because I knew that it was going to be really bad for me, for musicians, for people going on tour, for people doing shows, and I just like wept that night because I knew it was about to be the worst time ever. And the following 2 years didn't disappoint, that's for sure, because it was a really challenging couple of years for that reason. And so I actually hit a mental health low, and as a result, had to really look inward. I think a lot of people did that in that time, like look at themselves in a way that they maybe never would have had time to before. And for better or for worse, we learned a lot more about ourselves, and that really contributed to this process. I had about half the album written before pandemic, and it was largely about mental health struggles and the sort of dichotomy of how we react and how we pull ourselves out of it. And this whole album is like a pep talk through that, because I thought, I'm tired of writing sad songs right now. And this was even before pandemic. I'm tired of writing sad songs. I'm going to write pep talk songs. I'm going to write songs that make me feel like a badass. And started kind of on that road because I was doing a bit more production for learning how to produce better. And I was like, I'm just going to do music that I want to do. I don't care. So a lot of this stuff was already written. Pandemic happened. Everything's magnified tenfold. And I just kept on with that journey. I just said, I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to keep writing these things that make me feel better. And that's where all these songs came from.
For me, the song Prodigal Daughter jumped out right away. It's quite a departure for your sound, kind of this vintage meets modern track. How did that song evolve?
I'm so proud of that song. Lyrically, that song is like really important to me. I think myself and a lot of people spent the last decade deconstructing religious and societal oppressive things out of their life. Being raised a religious person, you have these certain expectations on yourself, and then you realize that you don't want those anymore, and that actually really kind of fucks you up. So that's what that song's about, and it's a very blatant interpretation of that, using the Prodigal Daughter reference. So the lyrics themselves were like this rebellious feeling for me, where I just get to say the things that are true to me that would have been it would have been something that would have shook me up, 20 years ago when I was a kid and so religious. So it's about owning your sexuality and owning your confidence and self-love and finding yourself while peeling away all these layers of oppression, basically. And musically, this was something I just started producing on my own at home. I found the Bollywood sample that was on the DAW that I used on Logic, and I just started messing with this grimy bass, and it was all about sound and energy. There wasn't any real motivation. I had a break beat at the beginning with a grimy bass and a Bollywood sample, and said, "There's no rules, man. You can put whatever you want together and make something cool." I was just having fun with it. There was no expectation of how it was supposed to sound in the end. And then I pulled in an acid bass sample for the pre-chorus, and threw in a soul top line in the verse, and then a very hushed, like, pop top line in the pre-chorus. So I was just absolutely having fun. And then sent the stems to Tim Pagnotta, and he finished them and actually built out the post-chorus, the Baby I'm Back post-chorus. He goes, I'm going to make that part, because when I had Baby I'm Back and it was sort of understated, he's like, that part needs to be big. So he brought that part to life, and the song just slapped. And everything just worked out. But that, because it was such a Frankenstein of a whole bunch of ideas together, that song was like in the works for a year in my computer, and then carried on, following that after I sent it away.
Around the time of the Skin and Earth acoustic album and the Dead End EP, you really leaned into doing a lot of the engineering and producing yourself. Did that carry through to this album? Oh, yeah, definitely. This album, I produced half of it. There's actually a few songs on the album that I did everything on, like Jaws, Rent, Money in the Bag. I produced all these songs, and Beside Myself also, and the other ones I co-produced. Did most of the tracks here, tracked all my instruments, my vocals, sent them off to get finished with friends long distance over pandemic. And I'm really proud to say that half this record is worked on by women, so I produced a lot of it. I brought in a female engineer to work on Beside Myself and Jaws. I have female collaborators on it. I had Emily Lazar master it. So I made a conscious effort to make sure that 50% was worked on by women. That was my goal at the beginning of making this record. And you know what? There was no other real goals. I got to do whatever I wanted, but that was my one main goal, and I'm proud to say I achieved it on this. You've had a lot of great social media posts with you playing different characters representative of your songs. Do you feel like these songs represent different aspects of yourself?
Yeah. I mean, that's also been like a fun post-release aspect that I've been able to dig into. Like, I didn't have the idea of personifying them, but when I really sit down and think about it, and I've always said this, my songs, every time you write a song, it's like going and speaking to Dr. Phil. It's like, you're doing therapy every time you sit down and work on a lyric. You're digging really deep. And there's no way to represent all aspects of a human or myself in one song. We are so multifaceted, and there's so many parts of our personalities that we use as coping mechanisms in different scenarios. And obviously the last couple of years of counseling have helped me really identify all this stuff. But I am, when I want to, like, the Prodigal Daughter persona is me owning my sexuality, loving myself, and, embracing the word slut and taking it back, but also being really smart about it and being self-aware. Whereas the Real Thing persona is this emotionally over-serving, almost like fake nice, and everybody's got a bit of that too, right? So it's been fun identifying what these personas are through the music, and they all certainly represent a part of me. What I've really loved is seeing fans kind of pick what they are and piece them together. I think it's a personality test.
You've always been very visual in your work, especially with the Skin and Earth companion piece, and you're doing that as well here with the clinic. Did the process change at all this time around?
I wanted to connect it to the Skin and Earth world, but not in a way that was so strongly connected as the last record, which was literally written in tandem. Storyline goes along with it, right? I've always intended for Skin and Earth, the comics, to eventually be standalone, and they are. So I'm working on more comics for that release, but I want them to be more of a standalone thing now. But that being said, being a fan of Lights, you're not just a fan of my music, you're a fan of all the visuals, a lot of the ideas surrounding it, and I always have more to offer there. So the best part about being a fan of something is Easter eggs and the idea of if you know, you know. So I've connected this via the clinic, which is an in-world facility, and it's ultimately just a big metaphor for music, where we listen to it to escape our realities, right? We plug in and get out of our heads. This world is becoming more dystopian as days pass, and this world in the comic is becoming more realistic. So I would go into a clinic and plug in if I had the option, just to get away and experience something else. That's what these songs are. Each song is a scenario in the clinic, and it's been really, it's been a fun way to create a more immersive record rollout and music listening experience, more so than just, hey, here's my song. Here's a way to envision the song and feel it and go into it and explore and find hints of the song titles before they're out. I've had a lot of fun with that. And, it really dictates the visual for all the videos as well.
As we mentioned, you're on the road in support of PEP. Now, in terms of the live show, what can fans expect?
I have completely overhauled the show over the course of the last year. I think it took pandemic for me to realize, I've been playing some of these songs for 12 years, and now I don't know what it feels like to enjoy playing these songs anymore. I want to feel like I'm playing the song for the first time. So I actually just switched out a bunch of band members. I brought in an MD to help rebuild the set. We've stripped all the tracks down back to stems again and rebuilt them back up, new ways of playing them, new instruments, new visuals. It's literally a new show, and every time I play the songs, it feels like the first time. So I'm basically injecting, like, the first time feeling back into this show, and it feels like that every time we run the songs in the set, and I'm really excited to take it on the road.